Okay, so the the much more contentious discussions happen around what we call gender development, and that's what we're going to talk about here with this lecture. There's a lot of discussions that happen on this, and there's a lot of theories out there by those who are not either in the science field or the psychological fields. And you see a lot of arguments that develop around this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the information here as science and psychology understands it. So obviously there's a lot to this discussion, and that doesn't always match up with like a person's beliefs and things like that. So, what I'm doing is I'm giving you, the discussion on how, psychologists view this. And there are tons of studies to go with it. And I will reference some of those here. So what we're looking at here is nature versus nurture and what they call the gender divide. So we know that we saw from our last lecture, there's definitely like differences between males and females, but we have to look at this even further because there is so much more to this story than just being a boy or a girl. And we know that there's a lot of stereotypes that are attributed to quote unquote boys and girls. So I said here the differences between boys and girls can be seen as early as the toddler years. So there is this understanding in development that by the time someone is 1, 2, or 3, they generally have a sense of their gender, meaning, are they male, are they female? So we know there's like some stereotypical things that we consider girl behavior, boy behavior. So like, for example, I said boys like to play with trucks, cars, and toy guns. Girls prefer dolls and cooperative, nurturing play. Boys are better at math and science. Girls are better at literature and art. Girls have better fine motor skills. Girls talk, write, and read earlier than boys. Boys are more aggressive and physical than girls. Boys have better spatial reasoning and hand-eye coordination, and girls are more emotional and more empathetic. So again, these are stereotypes. So, I mean, you guys know by now, stereotypes aren't always the rule. So what we're going to look at here is how psychology breaks this down. And the first thing that we have to talk about is what are gender roles. And gender roles are basically what you see every day. These are the behaviors and attitudes expected of male and female members of society. So this is the social construct we see here. Women have to behave this way. Men have to behave this way. This is different in all cultures. There's different expectations. So, one thing that might be taboo here could be, completely appropriate in another culture and vice versa. So we know that most of the time children learn these roles from their parents. Children are very observant and they tend to copy what they see, all right? Because behavior is modeled for them. So because they're developing, they're going to follow the behavior that is presented to them. So it's no surprise that children tend to follow parents in terms of a lot of things, not only behaviors but political ideas, religious ideas, because that's what is presented and modeled for them. So that should be no surprise there. I gave some examples here. Women cook, they clean, they take care of the children. Men work, whatever. Those stereotypical gender roles. Gender roles are completely a social construct. They are something that is presented to us, and we are told like, oh, you're a girl, you have to behave this way. Oh, you're a boy, you have to behave this way. So I have a little video here that just kind of shows you like how early we kind of start to develop gender roles.
School years, children have a strong sense of gender identity and gender role expectations. Most 2-year-olds know with certainty whether they are male or female, and by the age of 4 or 5 begin not only to develop gender constancy, but often show rigid standards for what they believe is appropriate male and female dress and behavior.
Can boys put on dresses? Do girls have short hair or long hair?
Long hair.
Are you a boy or a girl?
A boy.
Are you ever going to be a girl?
No.
What are boys like?
Oh, I don't know.
Are they different than girls? How are they different than girls?
Because they don't put stuff like girls on.
Boys don't put on girls' clothes?
No.
Can girls put on boys' clothes?
No.
Alexis, are you a boy or a girl?
A girl.
Are you ever going to be a boy?
Mm-mm.
Are you a boy or a girl?
Boy.
Are you ever going to be a girl?
No. Boys are better than girls.
Why?
Because boys are stronger than the girls sometimes.
What would happen if you put on a dress?
All the girls and all the boys will laugh at me. I won't look like a boy, that wouldn't look like a girl.
Would it be okay?
No way.
Young children appear to begin to acquire gender role stereotypes at about the same time that they develop gender identity. And by the age of 3 or 4, most children, when asked questions about the activities appropriate for a male doll and a female doll, readily give stereotypic responses.
Which doll likes to clean the house?
This one.
Who takes care of the babies?
This one.
Who goes to work?
This one.
So you can see there that, this is something that is, instilled in us. And even at a very young age, we tend to kind of go along with this. So again, this leads us to a much, much bigger question. And that question is really difficult when it comes to gender identity, okay? We have these gender roles that we're supposed to fit into, and we can be judged if we don't fit into those. But when it comes to gender identity, we have to really look at what that is. So like gender identity is a personal conception of oneself as male or female. It's how they feel. Do they feel male? Do they feel female? There is a possibility where they can identify with both, or they can identify with neither. You've maybe heard of, vocabulary like transsexual or non-binary. These are all part of gender identity and how one identifies with their gender. So I said here, it is internal. This is what's felt by the individual. And this can be influenced by outside factors. So like, as we get into this, I myself identify as a female. Okay. I did early on. And what happened is, I started to really pay attention to your quote unquote female, clothes, accessories, activities, things like that. But that is what I identified as. So like I felt comfortable in that situation. I felt comfortable as a female. It is possible, and there is science to support this, where a person can identify with the opposite sex, okay? So like they can be born with the female sex, but can identify as a male. And again, this is where you get a lot of the controversy around this topic. Scientists today, with all the research they're doing, they are seeing that, your brain chemistry can absolutely be the opposite of the sex that you are born with. And they've actually gone back to looking at twin studies again for this. And they're finding that with like identical twins, if one is like transgender, the other one almost always, the identical twin is almost always transgender as well. So that kind of tells us right there, we see a lot of biology in this. We see a lot of nature in this. And again, this is a tough concept for some people to really recognize and understand. But we know throughout history, there have been cases of those who are transgender, those who identified with the opposite sex at which they were given at birth. And, as an example, I had a professor in college who had 2 sons, and she chose to kind of raise them in a non-gender specific environment, meaning that she didn't necessarily push male gender roles on them or female gender roles on them. She just kind of let them, develop on their own and, kind of, let them do what they felt was comfortable. And she said that she knew even as a toddler, 2 and 3, that they were identifying as male because she would sometimes buy them toys that were female toys. So for example, she not only bought them male toys, which they tended to gravitate towards, she also bought them a Barbie doll just to see how they would react with it. And she said that, they were exceptionally aggressive with the Barbie doll, swinging it around, slamming it off of things, tearing it apart, very quote unquote boy behavior. So she knew early on that both of her boys had actually identified as male just based on what they gravitated towards, as young children. And when you speak to parents of transgender children or non-binary children, they almost always say yeah, we knew early on that they didn't feel comfortable being identified as male or female. So I have a little video here where they're just talking to parents of transgender children, just to kind of get you a sense of what kind of happens within this kind of community, so to speak.
My name is Rose. I'm a transgender girl. I was born a boy, but I always knew that I was a girl.
My name is Devon. I'm a trans male. That means I was born female, and I live now as a male. When I was 3, I decided that I was going to grow up and be a father and marry Janet Jackson.
She would write letters to Santa Claus, to the Tooth Fairy. When would I be turned into a girl? Could you turn me into a girl?
I'm Jay. I'm a non-binary trans person. That means that I'm not a man, nor am I a woman. I was raised as a girl, but when I learned about non-binary gender identities, it was like a whole new world had opened up for me.
My name is Ronnie, and my sister Ellie is transgender.
Ellie told us on her 4th birthday that she was a girl in her heart and her brain. And I said, "You're my favorite princess boy." And what did you say, Ellie?
No, I'm a princess girl.
My struggling point was this had to be a phase.
The reality is acceptance takes a while.
I was terrified of coming out. I was afraid of losing friends, family, loved ones. I was afraid of this discrimination and potential violence I could face.
I was so terrified that I wanted to die. Got threatening letters. One of the quotes said, do us a favor, Paula, and put that gun back up to your head and finish the job.
I'm scared as a dad for her safety, whether a society will be as accepting as her family and her friends are.
I feel embarrassed and unsafe when people out me to other people.
If there isn't a gender-neutral bathroom available, when there are only men's and women's bathrooms, I have to make a decision about how I look that day and whether there's more risk for me going into the men's room or the women's room.
I was chased by 4 people in the metro for being transgender.
I have been denied health care. I have been gawked at. I've been humiliated. I have been physically assaulted several times when using a bathroom.
Seeing her face the first time we let her wear a dress outside of the house, pretty special.
You're different, that's okay. Just keep on being yourself.
Support means listening. Maybe not understanding, but just listening and being there for me.
Pushing back on jokes or offensive comments at the expense of transgender people.
The easiest way to support transgender people is to follow their lead.
Supporting transgender people means letting them be who they are.
I'm proud to be trans because I want to be myself.
I'm proud to be trans because I think life is too short to be anything besides what you are. This is who I am.
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 So with this, you know, they mentioned a few things there, and you heard some of the parents say, like, yeah, we knew early on, you know, how this child was feeling and whatever. But they also highlight the issue that we see today, that there is a significant amount of violence that is associated towards people who are transgender or on that spectrum. Overwhelmingly, the suicide rates are extremely high for transgender people, and the murder rate is also extremely high for transgender people. They face a lot of scrutiny and criticism and segregation, even still today, which is why you see it discussed a lot. Which is also why there's, you know, groups today that are trying to like protect and fight for the rights of those. So understand, when we're talking about gender identity, it's the way that one feels internally, you know. And I can remember growing up with, you know, some friends, and even when we were little, knowing that, you know, even though that they were quote unquote female and were given a female name, dressed in female clothes, at least until they got to be a certain age, that they just didn't always like fit in as a female. And as time went on and we got older, you know, it became very apparent that they, you know, didn't identify as a female. And they, you know, ultimately chose to, you know, sorry about that, to seek, you know, assistance in like transitioning. So, you know, there is ways with like modern medicine and whatnot that it is possible for transgender people to start to kind of transition to the gender that they identify with. It can be a very expensive process. It includes a lot of hormones and things like that. But, you know, it definitely is very possible, and it is working today. It is happening today. So that's something to be kind of aware of. This other video that I have here is showing you like people who, how do I say this, didn't really know they were transgender because outwardly they appear to be male or female, but then their chromosomal makeup is actually the opposite of what they look like physically. So that is also something that you see here. And you're going to look at one study in particular with this person right here in Australia.
As many as 40,000 Australians don't have standard sex chromosomes. The scientific principle used for decades that all girls had XX chromosomes and all boys XY isn't reliable. Are we just on the cusp of learning what determines gender?
We really are. I mean, we are just beginning to understand this, and I think the more we go into it, the more we understand how complex this whole situation is. As I said, it's a very complex network of genes that operate in space and time.
Christy North has always felt female, but when she was 15, she found out she was born with male chromosomes and internal testes.
There was no mention during school, during human development, that there can be mix-ups with your chromosomes.
The scientific world is on the verge of discovering what really determines gender, and in many cases how little it has to do with our environment.
I just sort of grew up with scarring and things and thinking, well, okay, what was this for? Why did I have this? But I'm being told these particular things. I'm being told that, yes, you know, at this stage of my life I'm a boy, therefore I must be one.
Why did they make you a boy?
I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea why they did it.
Australian law, too, is grappling with the latest science on what it means to be male or female. The federal government tried to prove this person was a woman.
The last thing you want to be doing is trying to prove that you are the person you are to someone that doesn't know you, someone has no idea about your life, never interacts with you at all, has never met you.
I know what a man is, and I know what a husband is, and I know what a father is, and he's all of those things.
Tonight on Four Corners, new and challenging science on the question of gender. What makes a boy and what makes a girl? If we relied on the common scientific definition of a male, that being someone with XY chromosomes, then Christy North would be a man. As an unborn baby, she was unable to process male hormones, so she developed instead into a female. The Melbourne woman has an intersex condition called complete androgen insensitivity syndrome. This is one of more than a dozen different types of intersex conditions affecting thousands of Australians. So there was nothing that made you any different from any of the other girls?
No, not at all. Even when I told my friends, I only told a few friends, but they had no idea.
My way of thinking is that she was always intended to be a girl, but she just got there by a different path. And that I think is a fundamentally different way of thinking. Instead of the negative way, which says this is a boy who didn't make it, this is a girl, you know, who did make it and was meant to make it this way, but life was just meant to be also a little different.
Many of these XY women are tall and beautiful. There are rumours that some actors and models have the condition. It often produces women with little body hair and clear skin.
It's something that I have. It's not something that I think about on a daily basis. I think about it occasionally, and if I mention it to friends or a prospective boyfriend or something like that, that's the only time it ever gets mentioned or brought up.
What has it meant for Christy to have XY chromosomes?
I think she's happy. I think she's happy. I don't think it's worried her at all. She's never really complained, or she's just a normal, a normal girl, you know, into the hair, coloured hair, makeup, you name it. She's into the latest fashions.
When Christy North was 2 years old, she went into hospital for a hernia operation. Internal testes were discovered, and Christy was later diagnosed with androgen insensitivity syndrome.
She was born with testes that are capable of making the male sex hormone testosterone. Her body is unable to respond in any way to that hormone because the receptors in every cell in the body for testosterone are absent. And the reason for that is a genetic alteration.
when I was in grade 6, Professor Warren, or Dr. Warren then, sat me down with my parents and my sister, and we discussed that I was unable to have kids and menstruate, and that was pretty much all that was said then.
It wasn't until Christy North was 15 that she was told that she had male chromosomes and was born with testes.
Would it have been in any way easier for you if you had been told everything at the beginning?
Well, yeah, it would have. It sort of growing up thinking that you had a hysterectomy or something like that when you were younger, it's not the case when you find out later on. So it would have been a lot easier if you knew straight away.
So you actually didn't know why you're infertile?
Oh, no.
Every year, Christy North receives an implant of the female hormone estrogen to help feminise her body.
There's so many people with the same problem. There's more than what you think there is. You know, when you knew people that didn't have children, you think, oh, why didn't they have children? So we know why a lot of older people didn't have children. It's because they had this problem and it was never spoken about.
Like Christy, tens of thousands of Australians don't have standard sex chromosomes. As well as girls with XY chromosomes, 1 in 500 boys are born with a double XX as well as a Y. Most have standard genitalia and are unaware of their chromosomal makeup until they try to father children and discover they're infertile.
So what does a situation like yours, having XY chromosomes, say about the gender spectrum?
Well, it's never all one or the other. It's 1 in 500 people has a chromosome variation of some sort. So it's not uncommon.
Most scientists believe we're just on the verge of learning what makes us male and female. And they believe one way to better understand this is through the study of those on the gender extremes.
I think throughout history, humans have been really interested in what makes us male or female. And underlying that is whether or not a testis or an ovary develops in the embryo.
Until the 1990s, gender was thought to be largely about chromosomes. But this principle was challenged when a scientific breakthrough was made during the study of people with intersex conditions. A new gene and its impact on the development of male genitalia was discovered. A team of scientists, including Associate Professor Andrew Sinclair, discovered SRY, the gene needed to start the process of maleness.
The rationale for finding that gene was that we could unravel the whole process and understand how you build something as complex as a testis. And by knowing all the different component parts, it's a little bit like putting a car together. If you know all the bits, when something goes wrong, you can pinpoint that and correct that if need be.
It's recently been discovered that the SRY gene is also present in the male brain region of the hypothalamus, the same area where gender brain identity is developed.
We've had some success in understanding SRY and how it makes a testis. We're now trying to look at what SRY might be doing in the brain. There is some evidence from our studies that there are genes on the Y chromosome, which males have and females don't, that make at least rats more aggressive. And so it could be that there are male-specific behaviours that are carried by genes on the Y chromosome, such as SRY.
Associate Professor Vincent Harley is now looking at a further 54 genes that have been discovered since SRY. These genes in the embryo are turned on differently in male and female brains, even before the organs that secrete hormones are formed. They may help scientists to explain why some people identify as one gender or the other, independently of chromosomes.
I think.
So again, you can see that there's definitely a lot more to this kind of understanding of things than is apparent. So Obviously, this is one thing that is discussed frequently in psychology.
My name is Rose.
So to kind of finish things up here, we have to understand that gender typing also plays a role in this. And gender typing is the actual process by which children acquire their gender identity and kind of what comes along with this. So it's like the actual process of becoming ultimately, who you are. And this kind of takes like nature and nurture and kind of like smashes them together, it is believed. So like, for example, as a society, we tend to, really do things that are for girls or for boys. And one of the biggest studies that you see today, like in sociology, is with toys and how they're marketed and how they look. It is very distinctive which ones are girl toys and which ones are boy toys. We even do this by assigning a name, like from birth. You give them a name often based on, the birth sex of the child. And that's why today, again, depending on how you view things or believe things, you're starting to see more people like give their children names that can be male or female, just so that like, as the child grows older and starts to identify, they can, have an easier, I guess, transition with their name. So, we even do this with colors. At the hospital, girl stuff is put in pink, boy stuff is put in blue. And that's a relatively modern thing. Historically speaking, even 100 years ago, those colors were not assigned to those genders. It was actually quite the opposite. Pink used to be much more of considered a male color, while blue was considered more feminine. So again, that's a very socialized thing. And then to kind of finish up with this, there's a lot of studies into social learning theory, and we actually look at these a little bit more later. But Albert Bandura was a psychologist who believed that people learn from one another through imitation, observation, and modeling. So children watch those around them and then model that behavior. And we often, not on purpose, but we tend to reinforce or punish certain behaviors. So like as a society, we may punish like a girl who dresses like a boy. Or call them names, or just say terrible things about them, and vice versa. You might have a boy who maybe really isn't interested in sports or things like that, which are kind of stereotypical like male activities like football. And maybe a dad punishes a son for maybe not playing, or we don't intentionally do this. Making a big deal about how pretty a girl looks if she's wearing a dress, but like we don't say the same thing to like a boy if he's wearing a dress. So again, I know there's a lot of controversy around this, so please understand that. But this is just kind of how like psychology looks at